Filipino people are very blessed to be in this place. The country in itself is a place I would say is worth dying for. It's worth protecting. My name is Vito Puyat. I'm an environmental associate here at the Vito Palawan. I've always loved learning about animals, how they behave, how they look. Everything about them really fascinated me ever since I was young. As early as first grade, I was already into wildlife conservation and environment conservation. And then it slowly grew as I matured and learned more about science, biology, and environmental practices as well as sustainability. The peak growth rate was when I was in high school. It was when you really get to apply all of the theory from science classes into real life concepts. And then it slowly and gradually just grew after that in college. And here I am right now. So ever since then, I could say that indirectly, my mom as well has influenced the passion that I have for environmentally sound practices. Because she's also shown that you don't necessarily have to be in a line of work that has environment, but you can still do a lot of good for the environment even then through different means that are unique to each person. Isa sa specialties ko ay animal psychology. Wildlife wherein was a very big focus of my studies in Newcastle University. Still the same, so applying more scientific research into the behavior of animals, and then slowly there I started to learn more about how similar a lot of wildlife is to us people. So for example, there are a lot of monkeys who can complete the same face recognition task as people, and even dolphins, they can even recognize themselves as individuals in the mirror. So these small tidbits of research and studies really interested me, got me more passionate about wildlife preservation, as well as finding unique ways in order to promote animal welfare, whether that was direct or indirect. And that's sort of how I also got into this line of work, from studying psychology in Newcastle University to really advocating for animal welfare rights, as well as environmental conservation and sustainability within the community as a whole from studying psychology in England. Right after I graduated, I decided I really wanted to see the country in itself because I really missed the Philippines. For almost 4 years, I was gone from the country, and I brought my college friends along with me to really show them the natural beauties of the Philippines, because that's what you really see on social media. And one of the places that I happened to stumble upon was El Nido, because El Nido consistently won most beautiful island in the world. It tops the list for travel. El Nido is known as a place of wonderful biodiversity, and it has a lot of sites that you can't see anywhere else, even within the Philippines. And I could say that I really fell in love with the place. 6 months after I visited El Nido, an offer came up from El Nido Resorts here. So they were looking for someone to help them with their coral reef monitoring project here, and I had no second thoughts from there. So I jumped straight ahead to the opportunity to study coral reefs, even though it wasn't my first field of study per se. I just wanted to take the opportunity to really make a change in El Nido, know more about its wildlife and biodiversity, and just be in El Nido in general. In the coral reef study, it sounds technical at first, but it's actually something that I really appreciate because it's something that the general community can really get engaged with. And that's what we also try to do with this study. So our method that we do here in 10 knots is actually very simple. What it involves is you simply have a boat here, and you have a sort of wood plank that someone holds onto, and you're slowly pulled by that boat across coral reefs. After that, it simply involves estimating how much live coral there is in a given place. So essentially, that's what I did in my coral reef project, was to establish that here among the company, and also try to establish it as a normal practice within the company as well. So when we started off in 2019, it was a very mixed bag of results in this case, where there were coral reefs that were still very beautiful, pristine, and preserved. But there are also some sites that you can tell were really damaged, whether that was by factors that are out of control like climate change or human activity. So in 2020, it was very interesting as well because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we could really observe the differences of sites after tourism was booming to absolutely no tourism in this case. And what we observed from there was very interesting. So popular sites like the Big Lagoon in El Nido actually had a resurgence in coral reef health. So in 2019, there were bits in the Big Lagoon that were actually dying due to the anchoring of boats there. But now we observed in the following year, there was actually bits of coral in the same places that were recovering. So it was very optimistic to us personally because it goes to show with the right regulations and the right policies that coral reefs can also recover even after being damaged. But throughout the study, I take away a lot of good messages in the case that El Nido has a lot of hope for its coral reefs. Even with the pandemic, I would actually argue that environmental conservation is still very relevant because it's a perfect time to really see how we're managing our natural resources in the country, where we're doing well in, and the aspects that we really need to work on. Palawan is often called the last paradise in the Philippines in this case, so the virgin forests in the Philippines. So what that means is that Palawan is very unique in its own biodiversity. So there's a lot of wildlife that you can only find here in Palawan. So the first thing that the people of El Nido can do is to learn more about it so that they can further appreciate what they have and they can find their own specific way to help out in preserving biodiversity because they understand it. So another project that I was working on last year, even throughout the pandemic, was our coastal cleanup projects. So this was our way of providing a source of income to displaced workers in our company and also teach them more about different environmental practices that they can do even when they're not working the resorts in order to help El Nido's biodiversity. Another dear project to me, and that's something that I regularly work on, I would say every day, is creating databases for the company and improving data literacy. Because it goes back to what I previously said. If people are more aware of the environment and our actions as well, that's one step that they need to take in order to taking real tangible steps into helping environmental conservation and really establishing sustainable practices. So Be Green is actually a neat acronym. So green in Be Green stands for Guard, Respect, Educate El Nido. The Be Green program started with our department head. So Miss Mariglo Laririt came to El Nido during the mid-90s as a biologist and a consultant for the company. So she established the Be Green program in order to further educate our staff, which were 90% locals. Because the idea behind it is that if they better understand the biodiversity in El Nido, the legislation behind El Nido as a protected area, as well as the different practices that they can do in order to help the environment, then the staff will bring that home with them, spread it throughout the community so that it can foster a culture of sustainability and environmental conservation. I guess yung biggest learning, the first thing that came to my mind, is to always keep your heart in the right place. It really is to remember why you're doing all of these in the first place. So it's having core values that you always stick to, something you don't compromise on, no matter what will happen. Environmental advocacy doesn't have to be a job per se. You don't have to have the words environment or conservation in your job title. If it's something you're passionate about and something that you realize is relevant to all of us as people who rely on nature, it's something that you can continue to work on no matter what your job is. I never see myself stopping to work for that advocacy. So I really do encourage people to be more engaged in environmental conservation in this case. Because whatever instance we'll find ourselves in, we'll always find that we need to rely on Mother Nature in this case. So we all need to cooperate towards all these initiatives and always remember we all come from different places, but that doesn't mean that any one of our contributions is more important or less important than the other. Every contribution is important, and when we all work together, that's when we can really consider us to have the best results, and we can really consider ourselves to be a true Filipino community in that sense. In that we listen to each other, we work together, and we also enjoy success together.
The impact of a humble pair of slippers can actually impact the lives of each community and also impact the environment at the same time. I'm Camille Rose Albarracin. I'm the founder and chief greennovator of Everything Green, which is the main company for the brand Greenellas. When I was young, my dream really was to work in the foreign service at saka hospitality industry because I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and I was exposed by my parents to like meet with mga diplomats, and then I've seen the way in the foreign at saka developmental side. When I took up tourism during my college days, I really wanted to like work in a hotel, and then we were given a chance to also do like a practicum training. So I was assigned in one of the 5-star hotels here in Metro Manila and in an international organization. When I graduated, I said to myself that I wanted to really focus on the hotel industry. Buti na lang talaga when I started in the hotel, there were opportunities. So I started with food and beverage first, and then I transferred to front office, be a part of a pre-opening of one of the hotels in Boracay. And then I also got an experience to also work abroad sa Singapore. And then when I got back, I applied again dun sa kung saan ako nag-OJT, which is an international organization. I was assigned as a senior officer for a facilities management unit. We had this activity. It's a 13th international conference about education for sustainable development. So that was actually a trigger for me because we had to provide materials and supplies that are really eco-friendly. And then we had another international conference wherein we focused about the marginalized sector. Another eye-opener again na we had to source naman all our materials from the marginalized sector. So doon yung na-open yung mind ko about sustainable development goals. And then that was parang a big impact to me when I realized na kami as a hotelier and as part of the hospitality that we are actually also generating waste. Doon pumasok yung idea na how do we now reduce the waste and how do we now practice sustainability. 2017-2018, my husband and I were really planning to focus on having a baby. So sabi ko, what if I'll just do parang consultancy and not really focusing on having a full-time job. So yun yung reason talaga. And it was also a good thing when I resigned. I got a consultancy project with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, where they got me to write or prepare their manual for sustainable event and exhibit. It turned out na meron pala akong other purpose din. From the DNR consultancy project, then I was introduced to this community who uses abaca waste, yung bakbak, which is actually abaca leaf sheet. So that was one of the materials that sabi natin, we could actually utilize. So testing lang naman, wala naman akong plan really to have a business. At baka pwede natin i-convert into functional hotel slippers. A good thing, the community in Bicol, talagang they're doing slippers. So we did a prototype, tapos we had to improve lang. From that point, when we had the prototype, I remember my sister, sabi niya, she has this fair for the school of my nephews who are also in sustainable products. Sabi, baka you wanted to like introduce your product just to test the market. So ganun yung ginawa namin. We produced like 50 pairs of slippers. In a span of 1 hour, naubos yung 50 pairs. So sabi ko, aba, may potential. Lalo na the material itself, it's already compostable. So that is one advantage. And then eco-friendly siya. That was the beginning of something. Tried to present it sa mga hotels, ganyan. And then buti na lang I came from the hospitality industry. So marami akong friends who are also very supportive. Grinelas is the greener alternative hotel slippers that is made out of abaca leaf sheet or the abaca waste. The reason why we also chose to use the word grinelas because it's a play of words for chinelas to also like elevate the Filipino brand, and then we combined it with green para it would somehow be catchy then. Good thing about grinelas is we're using agricultural waste or the abaca waste and then giving it another purpose or another function. And kapag dinispose nila yon, since it's compostable, they can also use it sa mga urban gardening. Kumbaga may purpose pa din siya even until the end of its life. One of the biggest challenges that we encountered was in 2019. Originally, I thought na making 50, 200 pairs, and 500 pairs is just the same as producing 5,000 or 10,000 pairs of Grinella slippers. However, iba pala siya. So what we did is we tapped a community here in Quezon City, which is the Persons with Disability Group, through DSWD, Rehabilitation Shelter Workshop. Kumbaga sila na yung gumawa ng assembly part. Another solution that we did, instead of like working with 10 lang in Bicol, the moms that are at their homes can also actually sew. Meron silang mga sewing machine din and can also manually sew yung materials ng ginabigay namin per batch and be able to cut then the other materials while at the comfort of their home. So meron, because of this problem, we were able to reach out to more artisans, to the mothers, to our persons with disability. So, parang kami biglang nag-expand ng supply chain, but it was worth it because we saw that there is different skill set then from each community. 2020 biglang nag-hit si COVID-19 and the pandemic has hit us hardly. So, what we did is we also expanded our items or our products. So, kumbaga, not only Grinelas as a footwear, but also coming up with other eco-lifestyle products that are relevant even during this pandemic. We came up with abaca pandan boxes, and then aside from that, we also have abaca bamboo face masks. Another thing that we did, we've also came up with products like, for instance, abaca condiments caddy, which was used by one of Patis and Toyo brand. So, until this time, we are developing products that are relevant to what the market needs. So, ganun yung ginawa naming transition from just hotel slippers. And now, what the brand from Grinelas is we're using everything green as our major brand. Personally, and as the founder of Everything Green and Grinelas, it is important for us to reduce in terms of the carbon footprints, because if we reuse all the products that we have, especially kailangan din in terms of looking at it not just from production but even to disposal. So talagang kailangan ititignan mo siya in a bigger scope na end-to-end siya so that we could achieve a circular economy, and that it is really important especially for the next generation. At this time, consumers who are into environmental products, it's also growing. It's also becoming a trend, but also having that certain purpose once you buy each product. I would really encourage people to really support environmentally produced products and that are also locally sourced and locally produced by our kababayans. My hopes and dreams for Grinelas and for Everything Green in general is really mag-scale up. Kasi for me, if we will be able to also penetrate the export market and makilala din yung brand na lahat ng slippers worldwide, lahat ng hotels will be using Grinelas, that would be a dream come true for me. Kasi that would mean more communities that we could be working on. You could start small. Start by also looking things in a small way, but also having big impacts at the same time. Start it with a good and green concept with your family first, and then inspire others also to do the same.